Hey guys, this is the Magicians Aftershow. We're talking binders full of Matt Frewer. We're talking, oh my gosh, twin gods and people riding on chariots of cats. Stay tuned for that God of the Week special segment. And we're talking timeshares that are not in Florida. Stay tuned.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Magicians Aftershow on AfterBuzz TV. We're talking Season 4, Episode 11, The 411. Good times. I'm Adrian Snow, and this is my fellow co-host.
Hey guys, it's Nate here.
Hey, so, first thoughts.
First thoughts. This was good. This was all of like the complaints that I've had for the last few episodes of them kind of like stretching out what's been going on and not really telling us. We just got so much of the story and like plot of like what the actual plot of this season is. So I was really excited about that. The whole thing with the librarians and this revelation that these gods that we've been seeing aren't actually gods. They're librarians that have been essentially pretending to be gods. Yeah, like that to me has made this whole season much more interesting. That like nice revelation. And two, the flip side of like that's of all of the things like possibilities and stuff that we talked about, like I had not considered that this is what the direction they were going to go in. So I liked it a lot.
No, yeah, I really like this episode. I'm here for any day that we have Matt Frewer, because I love Matt Frewer, one of my favorite Canadian actors. You can see him. I guess I should just do this right now. You can see him in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and Orphan Black. And
I know him from Eureka.
Eureka, yeah. Eureka is one of the good ones. He's also Max Headroom. If you're like a 70s kid, 80s baby, you might know who that is.
No idea.
If you don't, get with it. I have a picture on the YouTube channel for you to see who that is. Then Google it. All right, so let's just go ahead and start off with Zelda and Kady, then just get right into the librarian. So Zelda has decided to go get more information about Everett, and the only way to do that is to go into the poison room. And the only way to do that is to have another librarian, so she's going to get Kady to come and be her little fake librarian buddy. So how did you feel about that, just overall, that exploration and Kady?
It was interesting for them
to go down there.
Give Kady something to do, you know, and I think given how they've kind of played the whole Hedge Witch's librarian things, like it's very interesting for her to be the one that goes. And I did like seeing her in her like librarian costume. Essentially, that was kind of cool. I don't know. It was interesting. I'm still really curious to see where that Everett like plot line goes. Like they obviously it was part of this episode and they showed it and they talked about it, but it was kind of like sprinkled throughout the episode. Like we didn't really. I feel like the weight of what she actually said about him and the fact that like
that he wants to become a god.
Like obviously it didn't really come until the end of the episode, but like that's pretty big. And that also kind of again leads to that question of why the library really wants to like control magic. Like it's not just for the sake of like control, like saving things and keeping everybody safe. There's a reason why that it's been the levels that they've been talking about all season have been so low for everyone, like the rations and stuff. It's like, where's all the magic going? Well, here's the answer to that question. So,
yeah, and I think it was a nice, I guess, reveal and also finalization of the fact that the Order are truly the bad guys. Like they aren't. Yeah. There's nothing they have done has really been redeemable in any sense. Like Zelda, like she's turned a new leaf or whatever, or flipped a coin or whatever you want to call it. But she's not. She's still part of this system that she's thankfully trying to break through.
Right.
But now we at least know that they weren't trying to be helpful when they decided to take over magic. Yeah. And it was nice to just kind of get a nice breakdown of like how it is to operate as a librarian, like the speed reading. That's like the first thing you learn when you become a part of the Order, and just how they're able to operate in the poison room, because clearly they're able to put the books in there. And so the introduction of those insects that you have to swallow whole, which I was like, that's just not physically possible.
I was also expecting to see maybe some kind of inkling of what's his name being in the poison room.
Christopher Plover?
Yeah.
I think that is, this probably could be saved for predictions, but I'll just say it now. I think it's probably the reason why they get locked in there is because he's in there and he potentially gets out and locks them in, or Everett knows that they're up to no good and has locked them in.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So, but overall, I really liked I really liked that part. I really liked seeing Dean Fogg just kind of lean into his his reckless alcoholism and helping them get Everett out of the office so they can go and explore the poison room. Yeah, and the ringing bananas, a nice little gag.
That was funny. Yeah, that was really funny.
So overall,
at first I couldn't figure out if like that was like his secret phone.
Yeah.
But then they made the joke.
The GPS is slightly off. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, because that's weird.
That was funny.
Because he doesn't seem to be anticipating it ringing. So, but it was nice to see like that's how they, even the library operates, is that the way they are able to communicate is always just through GPS coordination and not through the way that we normally communicate. That was cool to see. Was there anything else to touch on with that? I think with Everett wanting to be a god, so does that tie into, do you think that might tie into Darth Elliott in terms of needing him to be released to kind of get people distracted, or what do you think?
Well, because of this show and how it can be kind of feel-goody, again, this is kind of prediction-y, but I feel like we might find out that like maybe the twins aren't actually so bad, and like maybe the story's been kind of like twisted, or maybe they were pushed to do bad things because they were like experimented on and stuff. But it definitely has to be related because of the whole binder thing. Like if he is going to try to do the same thing of somehow harnessing that magical power to make himself a god, he's going to have to bind it to something for him to be able to make that connection. So he's either going to have to use the binder. He's either looking for the binder or some other way.
Well, I thought that he didn't. I mean, he does need the binder to do it, but the binder also doesn't he just need mainly parts of a god? So wouldn't he just need to take a part of the sister god and put it inside of him, and have the binder come and do that for him?
Well, from what I understood, it was the way that the reason why the binding worked is because the sister god was an actual god, and the god themselves have power within them. So they took the power, so that they were just using the god as a power source. What it seemed like to me is Everett is, as opposed to trying to use a god as a power source, he's just trying to use the fount of magic in some type of direct way to get this reserve pool, which again ties into the Fillory plotline of them. That has to be the reserve that they're talking about is somewhere on Fillory, because that's where the spigot is. That's where the connector is, right? So that would make sense if they're going to.
Well, the spigot's like throughout. There's one like located in multiple places.
The main one that they attach the siphon on, right, is on the flip side, the underworld Oblivion Castle thing in Fillory. So and they talk about how Black Spire is underneath the castle, and the water lady was talking about where they were keeping it captive. So I feel like I don't know if it's going to be the same thing of like somehow that's like god power, or if he's just trying to avoid the whole issue of having to deal with the god's wrath of like killing a god again, and just being like, well, I just got the magic directly. Now how do I get that in me?
I don't know, because that wouldn't really make him a god to just have an endless source of magic per se. It would have to be, if he wants the god power where it's magic being turned off doesn't even affect him, it would make sense that he would want to do what
but if you think of it like as like it's obviously it's magic, so it's not something that we can like relate in tangible terms. But if you, in my head, I try to think of it as like a power source, essentially. If you do stuff with magic, and the magic is that kind of energy that promotes that. And in my head, a god, again, kind of almost has like a nuclear reactor inside themselves where they can create that own energy. So that's why when the magic turns off, it doesn't bother them, because they can do it on themselves. So if I'm Everett, I'm thinking, if I have this fountain of magic, I can create a pool. Maybe there's a way that I can essentially jumpstart my own reactor, having enough power so that I can.
So that basically he can create the same type of stone that the other librarians created without having to chop
and so
up
that's
the
why I was thinking he would try to get the binder in some way, so he could find some way to take all this big abstract power that he's reservoired and put it into some type of focusing device that makes him a god, like he saw the other librarians do. Because that's what I'm assuming is. That's where he got the idea from, is somewhere in the library there is the story of these gods before, because that's the other implication that was really interesting in this episode, is that the librarians, pre-exist some other gods, like some of the younger gods, because if they're here being Angus and being all these other air quotes gods, even though not really, they're still involved in pantheon and all this other mythology that's going on. So this had to have been way
the order is
back.
pretty ancient.
Exactly.
The binders.
So how old is Everett? Is he like a new librarian that just found out about this? I don't know. This whole stuff very, very interesting to me.
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and into the whole Margo, Julia, Penny, Matt, aka Binder storyline then, just to jump off of that. So I love that we just kind of got straight to Margo being back in New York. We didn't have to deal with like the whole quest back or anything like that.
It was very
just,
Game
like,
of Thrones.
Yeah.
In
what way?
Season 7 for me, where they did the truncated season and like they're like, all right, he's traveling all to Dragonstone from north of the Wall, and it's like next episode, it's like cool, he's there, even though that should have taken like 3 months. That's what I mean.
Yeah,
you're right.
But,
and you know, it's okay. They move the plot along. It just reminded me in that same way of like, all right, that's fine. This is where we are now.
Well, I think they've done so much of them like traveling and being lost, and that, you know, after the whole musical episode, there was kind of a desire, I think, from fans to just kind of be like, can they all be together already? Like, do we have to keep stretching it out where they're not together? So having them do that, I appreciated it because I didn't really want to see her. I didn't want to see the extra 5 minutes it would take for her to figure out how to get out of Fillory or the land south of Fillory.
Right.
So I appreciated that. And then I was also here for tampons being used for blood magic. Yes. Yes. Can we include this in every type of supernatural show that needs blood magic from here on out? Because it makes so much more sense than stupid 40-minute long quest for someone's blood. Period. Blood magic done. I just never seen that before, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'd rather do that than cut my hand open or something.
Yeah, or like have to rip someone's heart out. Just be like, just give it like 2 weeks, and we're good to go. You know what I mean? So I appreciated that being used as a way to progress the story. I also appreciated Penny overcoming his, gross outedness to do the actual spell. And I really liked just the overall visual of the binder coming to life and coming out of the book.
I liked, even that, like, being a big fantasy guy, like the way that he immediately started talking in that third person, like you get this kind of like mystical trapped person kind of a thing, and it was it was really cool. And it again, like, this was not a direction that I thought the story was going in. It was a really surprising element for me, and I enjoyed it a lot. Yeah,
it kind of him talking in the third person, outside of just kind of making it more like a book, also added a sense of humor to the character that I really appreciated, because that can be kind of boring to have someone do a third person, but for the way Matt Frewer did, and especially with the Took You Long Enough, I was like, I appreciate that he's
coming up with a lot of like exposition too, and like storytelling, so for it to be also entertaining at the same point is very important, and I think they nailed it, because he basically is like, all right, in case you haven't figured out what's going on, here's what's going on.
Well, and it was also, he had the major reveal of it being librarians, which was nice to include that. And I know every year they like to do their music episode, and every year they like to do the little puppet show, or their shadow puppets. So I appreciated them bringing that back just for this instance, and for them including the actual characters in seeing it, because usually it's done kind of just for the audience at home. So to have Penny be like, really, a puppet show right now? I appreciated that. So Jan Charles George says, I feel like Alice and Quentin is kind of forced at this point. We'll see. We'll get there. But outside of that, we get Hyman making a comeback. Didn't even think he could leave. I didn't know he could leave Break Bills.
He turned himself into a penny. He can...
Well, yeah. Well, Penny turned himself into a penny.
Right, but and then afterwards, he was like, "Oh, that's cool. I want to do that too." And then...
Yeah, I just didn't think that. I guess, I didn't think he would leave Break Bills, but I guess if they're not there, and he is their favorite story,
you have to follow the storyline.
I guess I was just very surprised, but it was refreshing to see him be like P40 and all that kind of ridiculousness that he does, and for him to just be so ridiculously offensive. Without even really, like, effortlessly offensive. Hyman, but I still really like you and what you do. And I appreciated that he was really just trying to be helpful to Penny 23. And it's like, you will never do this for yourself. You're always going to sacrifice yourself for others. Yeah. Whether or not you're Penny 23 or Penny 40. Like, just get it on with Julia, which, okay.
Like, it kind of...
It was also, it just kind of popped up out of nowhere that Hyman came back, and I think it's because they just really like the actor. But it was like, we get it.
It's gotta come in. He's gonna come into play in like the next few episodes for sure. Because there's no reason that they would just bring him up just for that. It has to have been like some foreshadowing for something. They're gonna need him to like inhabit some object or something to like help them. Like maybe he's gonna help with like the binding spell, or something like that. Especially them on this episode bringing him in so late. Like there's got to be a reason. Yeah,
I mean, I feel like they kind of have a lot of Chekhov's gun, and is that Chekhov that does that shit? Whatever, whichever playwright that does the gun that's introduced at the top of the act has to be used by the end of the second act, something like that. I don't know. I haven't been to theater school in a very long time. But
yeah. You're right. Wow, I've heard that a long time.
Yeah, but they kind of do that with like introducing Christopher Plover, and then having him disappear for a while, but then having them have a need to go to the poison room. So I think them bringing in Hyman does mean something. I just don't know what yet.
Also, for like I've noticed too, especially when they do like types of magic or like specific spells where they talk about the spell, it's that is the gun where that that if they're telling you about it now and they want you to know how it works, that's because they're going to use it later and they want you to understand. So in that same way, that's why I think it was important that he did all that stuff and it was seemingly random, but when he explains it of like how did you do this? Oh, well, remember when you told me before how to do this thing? Later he's going to do that thing. At least that's what I feel like. Yeah,
I think especially now that Julia's been kidnapped, body napped by Darth Elliot, that will probably come into play. And it was also nice to see Margo flexing her fairy eye, because we've kind of gotten hints at it, but for her to clearly be able to see him, I was like, oh, that's really. I wish she had been back in New York when Penny was dying, like, because she's had the fairy eye. I feel like there was definitely maybe a slight, maybe I'm completely wrong, but a slight crossover of when she had the fairy eye and when Penny was trying to figure out how to get back into his body. Maybe not. A slight crossover before he went down to the library.
I don't think she got the eye until later that season.
Right? Maybe. I could be wrong. That's why I said it. Could be wrong, but I thought it would have been nice to see that interaction.
Tell us in the chat.
Yeah, let us know. Can Julia get hurt? She's indestructible. No, she's not. She is indestructible, but she. It doesn't mean that her body can't be inhabited by someone else. I don't think. I think he could definitely use her body in some way.
We'll find out. I found more interesting the whole thing of the binder.
And gods can kill gods.
Hey, I can help you become a full god again, but by the way, I can also help you become a full human. So what you want to do. By the way, when you're done, you got to burn me.
Yeah, and either way is painful. So there was that kind of thing at the end with her and Penny where she's like, she wants to be happy. But then I was like, but the binder just told you that pain is happening on both sides. So it doesn't really matter which way you go. There will be pain.
Yeah, but...
But is she not happy as a god?
It's a clear choice.
Being a god?
No, being human.
Okay, being a god, 100%.
After growing up human, so you can watch everybody that you've known your entire life to grow old and die.
She can die whenever she wants. Just have another god kill her. What? I'm not gonna give up the power. Are you kidding me?
Wow. All right.
It's too useful.
Yikes.
In a world where magic is real, and there's always
being able
danger,
to do magic already is not enough power.
No,
you have to be a god.
Because we've seen the past 2 seasons of how that cannot be helpful. She's been more helpful as a goddess than she ever was as just a magician. Like, it's just true.
So you want to be a god
and she was
because
a great goddess.
You want to be helpful.
That's what I think gods are supposed to be there for, if you believe in such things. Anyways, before we move on, I think we just want to send out a little thing about talking about AfterBuzz and how much we love you guys. You got that, Nate?
Yeah, we just really wanted to say thank you to all you guys for making us the ESPN of TV Talk. And for us to continue to grow, we could really use your guys' help. If you're listening on YouTube right now, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button and subscribe. And if you're on iTunes, go ahead and give us a 5-star rating. And no matter where you're listening, please leave us a comment so you can get involved in the conversation. Being a part of AfterBuzz TV has meant so much to us. We really, truly appreciate you guys for supporting us and doing what we love. And don't forget to tell your friends and keep enjoying our shows.
Yes, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, please, please, please rate, subscribe, all that jazz. We do read the comments on YouTube, even if we don't agree sometimes. We do reach out and hear you when you talk to us on Twitter and everywhere you go. So please do all those things. We appreciate you having being our fan base. And back to the show. So, was there any final thoughts you had before we move on to...
What about Penny? If she chooses to be a god and then falls in love with Penny, then she has to watch Penny die.
Penny is also not fully human and can live far longer than a regular human. He already said that. He already said, like, they are essentially kind of immortal.
Oh, my God.
What?
Are travelers? Is that
Yeah.
canon?
Yeah.
They're old?
Yeah, they're not fully human.
Interesting.
And he hinted at that when she talked about it, like, an episode or two ago.
I must have missed that.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like...
I just think it's better.
I
for
just
her.
feel like the God choice is that thing of, like, it's like the obvious answer, and that's why it's, like, not the right answer.
I think in the books, she's still a god.
Spoilers.
Oh, why? Y'all don't read the book?
I don't know. We'll see.
I don't read the book either.
I'm just surprised that you
that's
feel
pretty easy to
you're
pick
so,
up.
like... Boom, this is what it is. Because even, like, I feel like humans are the right choice, but also, like, I'm still kind of, like, in the middle, and I don't know what she's thinking. So I thought that was just really interesting for him to be like, because I was expecting him to be like, hey, by the way, I can help you restore your godhood. I was not expecting him to be like, by the way, if you just want to go back to being human, we can do that too. I just didn't think that was an option.
I think for Julia, it's better to be a goddess. I just do, and I think the way that she handled being a goddess when she was a goddess was really good.
I agree with that.
It doesn't mean that it can't go dark. It doesn't mean that she can't suddenly have like a dark turn, but that can happen as a human too.
Very true.
So why not have that extra? She's been so helpful,
Sure.
like especially when magic was turned off. She was just so helpful. I can't not say that I don't want her to be a goddess. But anything else on that before we move on? Just I want to touch on Josh, Finn, and Tech before we move on to Quentin and Alice. All right. So, eating out with Josh Hoberman is probably one of my best or one of my favorite little one-off ridiculous scenes I've ever seen on the show. I don't know how you felt about it. I loved it.
I was confused.
Lavender-infused honey is a thing. It's marvelous. Just real talk. You were confused? Why?
I didn't know. Couldn't figure out what was going on.
Well, the magic being wonky in Fillory has been slightly confusing for me because they haven't really explained it as much, and so I've kind of been... And then they'll explain it partly with, like, Finn going on her little quest, and then they'll change it again, and so I didn't really realize that it was an actual ongoing problem until Josh had that eating out with Josh Hoberman. But also kind of knowing that might be a part of his future because it's part of the Winds of Fate, I really appreciated that too. I was like, oh, he might actually have a cooking show called Eating Out with Josh Hoberman. Food Network, make a show called that for my own dirty sense of humor. So we get introduced to the Naiad, and someone was talking about that, but now it's gone. We'll find it. Yantrell George's godhood equals practically indestructible and basically limitless magic. Yeah. Ain't nothing wrong with that. Anyways, we get introduced to the Naiad whose blood, and this was kind of a fun little play on how water works for this universe of it being her blood that lives outside her body, and anytime we drink it or pee in it, it's painful to her. I wish we had more time with the Naiad. I hope she comes back next season. What were your thoughts on that whole introduction to that character?
It was. I mean, this is. I really like all the Fillory stuff for that same reason of like I love Narnia. I love fantasy world, so I like that they basically get to like make up whatever they want to kind of go along with it, and it's usually pretty interesting. I'm with you. I would like to see more of that kind of a elemental style, like of explanation of things. But I just found the scene really interesting as a great, like, just the way that they talked about it for them to ultimately, at the end, realize that it's more than just like the water. It's about like the magic and the reserves under like. I just thought that was a really clever way of taking something that I thought was seemingly not that important to the main storyline, and then by the end I was like, oh.
Like this is actually like magic you're talking about, the flow of magic,
And the trio of Fen, Josh, and
Tick
is pretty humorous.
Oh yeah, it's great to kind of just have that trio doing their thing, and Tick, the little the button of him after they figure out the 13th through the rhyme, the bear, was it the bear trap? No, the bear skip. And him taking a sip of her blood water, just like not even thinking about it, and her yelling out in pain at the end. I just love like that kind of hopefully done on set kind of button thing that they play with. But the idea of the bear skip, it seems like a hybrid of hop skip, hopscotch. I don't know. I don't play that anymore. And the floor.
Wow, you're so cool.
I'm just old. That's it. And the floor is lava. And then also Ring Around the Rosie, which was it's like a hybrid of like every single type of childhood
nursery,
thing you could do. Yeah, which I really appreciated. And that their rhymes were about learning what they said, the cistern, like you're learning cisterns.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's cute. Yeah, because you do
underground
learn.
reservoirs.
Yeah, you know, much more educated way to learn things than Ring Around the Rosie.
Yeah.
When you don't realize it's about the plague. Fun times. So when they finally get in, I'm curious to see what that's going to lead to, especially since it's so tied to being a part of the bear. Do you think it's just going to lead directly to the 13th? Do you think there's going to be an actual bear we're going to encounter? I love the honey or die line at the end. Hopscotch, thank you.
I haven't thought anything about the bear stuff. I just figured that it was related to the Everett thing of the librarians and them like keeping magic. I didn't even think about the bear thing. I didn't read it that way, that there's like a bear. I thought it was just like that's just happened to be like a
way
folk
to hide
tale
it.
that just had kind of like been passed down as a way for people to remember, but not really remember until it was like really relevant.
Yeah, I had a feeling. I've had a feeling that maybe they might still bring in a bear just because they kind of like to make you think that they're not going to do something as on the nose, and then they actually do it. And so,
I mean, we've seen talking bears on the show before.
We've seen talking bears, so I wouldn't be surprised if that was protected in some way by a talking bear or something of the sort. But I'm curious to see what the tunnels will lead to in the reservoir.
I feel like it's going to lead to like librarians.
You think the librarians are in Fillory?
Or at least, I mean, again, under Fillory, wherever that like
the Black Spire.
Yeah, where that's like the main hookup to magic. It's right there.
Fillory also had its own magic that ran underwater back in season 2 or 3 when it got turned off. So it may not necessarily be quite the Black Spire. I agree. Anywho, I'm sorry guys. I'm trying to do triple duty of leading this and then engaging in conversation and then also trying to do the chat. So if you see me all of a sudden stop and mumble to myself, it's because I'm reading.
You're doing great.
Thank you so much. All right. Well, anything else to say about Josh, Finn, and Tuck? I'm just happy to see them on a little quest together. I think it'll be fun. I like that they're giving our side characters lead roles this season. It's been a lot of fun to see that. And let's go ahead and move on to Alice, Q, and Mayakovsky. So Mayakovsky making a comeback. I was watching some Catherine Zeta-Jones movie, and he played her boyfriend before she leaves him for the one where she's a cook.
No idea.
Chat if you know. The one where she's a cook and she falls in love with handsome face from The Dark Knight. Oh my God, what is his name?
Nope.
Aaron Eckhart. There we go. Mayakovsky played her boyfriend. Anyway, it's a fun fact. So we finally have a reason for Alice and Q to be alone again. I don't know.
Convenient.
So someone in the chat mentioned that they are tired of them trying to make Alice and Quentin a thing. I mean, I don't know. I do like Quentin with Elliot. But I don't know. I mean, I don't mind them together. I wish Quentin would stop pouting so much. He's pouting a lot.
Yeah, I didn't really care for this.
He's pouting quite a bit. throughout the season. But it was nice to see that he got his specialty, which was repair small objects. I think he was fucking with him.
Minor mending.
I don't think that's true.
Well, I mean, spoiler. In the books, his thing is minor mending.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and repairing small things is like a cute way of like saying that without saying it.
Oh, okay. Well,
but I mean, I feel like
it still works. But.
Yeah, but and I also feel like that is going to lead into the end of the season of him using his ability to like fix small things. I don't know if he's going to like, put the pieces back together or something, or maybe he's going to like unbind the stones or something of that nature. But his specialty is definitely going to have to come into play.
Yeah, they wouldn't introduce it without bringing it up later.
Yeah, I mean, I like Mayakovsky as a character, but I just don't. I'm with this person. Like, I honestly don't care either way if they get together or if they don't. I just am kind of tired of the like
back and forth.
Yeah, I don't, and this is an interesting way to go about it for sure. Like the time travel in different bodies and each of them having to interact with the other one who's in a different place in the relationship it's an interesting way to. I mean, I've never seen anybody approach it that way. But because of what I've seen with all these characters and how pouty Quentin is and like how Alice is like kind of always the same way, it's just like.
Well, I think it's just been
don't care, guys.
It's been going on for a long time. So because we're talking about the scenes that they're referencing in the timeshare are season 1, like episode 6 or something like that, you know. So and we're now on season 4, episode 11. So them being on and off, it's every season. It's not like, you know, Ross and Rachel, where at least you got like a 6-year break.
Did she cross the line by kissing him?
Why? Because it wasn't his. Well, I mean, it's still technically his body.
Well, I feel like that makes it worse because she knows that he doesn't want that.
Yeah, I mean,
it just came off kind of assaulty to me. Like I feel like if that happened, if that was the other way around, that would be. I feel like it would be a little more jarring, maybe. But like, just the idea of kissing someone who you know doesn't want to kiss you, but you're going to take advantage of.
Well, she's kissing a version of him that does want to kiss her. So you're saying because it's his body.
But she knows better. She yes, at that time back then he wanted to kiss her.
Yeah, I think it's also going off of that. I think it's also the same reason why Quentin allowed past Alice to kiss him. You know, even though he didn't want it, it was one of those things of like, if I'm too put off by it, it's going to signal something with him. And she, unlike past Alice, didn't get to finish her spell. Because when I went back and watched, I was like, oh, she did not actually finish his memory wiping spell because she ran out of magic. So there is kind of the playing off of, well, I don't want to mess this up in terms of messing up the past so he can make it back in time. Yeah. But at the same time,
because they did the knots and all that stuff. And I feel like by the time that happened, I don't know. It just stuck out to me. I thought that was a breach of trust. I would be, if I was Quentin, I would be upset
on a few things. Because I was curious as to when did Quentin come back. Like I was like, well, when did he come back? Because
I think if you watch it, you can tell he comes back in the middle, and she's like, and he's like, yo, what?
No. He came back before. He came back before he...
I'll rewatch it.
Yeah, because there was this moment of... there was this moment of... She was kind of resisting, and he was pulling her in, and she went for it. And then they were still kissing. And he was still kissing her. And then when they pulled away, she was like, oh, that was nice. And she went in for a kiss again. And that's when he was like, no, it's me. But I'm pretty sure... that he came in halfway through the first kiss. Like, I don't think.
I feel like he's made himself pretty clear about how he feels.
Okay. I'm not denying that either, but he's also just spent, an hour or two with the past Alice, who just told him that, like, she's the best thing that ever happened to him. And so it's not
That's not,
if it could be as black and white as we want it to be, everything in life would be a lot easier.
True.
But especially when it comes to them, there's always been this weird grayness sometimes of it, even with Alice. If you go back to when Alice was recovering from being Neff and Alice, and he was trying to convince her to fall back in love with him, I'm not saying that either one of them are good for each other or are right. I'm just saying that they have a common way of handling how they deal with their emotions, which is they pull away, they get back together, they pull away, they get back together. So, but I don't know. That's just I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it just kind of goes to as much as we can get frustrated with these characters in specific, like they are still very interesting, well-written characters because we're able to have this discussion about being unclear on their emotions because it is such like a tricky situation. Feelings are neither right nor wrong, and they change, and you deal with these people and you have these interactions with people, and they have this very tenuous relationship. It's interesting to watch. Yeah,
and they can get caught up in the moment of things and then realize, nope, this isn't where I'm at anymore, and it seems like Quentin right now, and who knows what'll happen next season. Quentin kind of wants to be with Elliot. Like that's been his main focus all season, is getting Elliot back, not being with Alice. So who knows where that'll go at this point. But any final thoughts on this before we move into God of the Week and then also predictions?
I think that's pretty good.
Okay, so let's go ahead and move into God of the Week.
Disappointed.
Oh, Kevin Sorbo. Disappointed indeed. All right, so this week there wasn't like a particular god that we really touched on that we hadn't touched on prior. So I decided to go with twin gods because I'm trying to figure out who these gods are going to be. And there's a few throughout different cultures and history. So I was like, let's just go with 3. So the first ones are Isis and Osiris of the Egyptians mythology. They are the twin children of, I'm going to say it wrong, Geb and Nut. They were also husband and wife.
Dope.
Yeah. Set, they were also siblings to other gods, and Set eventually chopped up Osiris. And little interesting, I was like, huh? Kind of playing into that. And Isis came and retrieved Osiris's pieces and wrapped them, kind of coming up with the origin of the mummy wrap. So that was like a fun little fact that I learned about that. Also, Isis is the most powerful of the Egyptian gods, which is another kind of like, well, maybe they are kind of going in that route. I was like, it would be nice if they cast people of African culture, but whatever. I was like, if they're gonna go that route, maybe they could bring that up. But she was the most powerful of the Egyptian gods, and she was absorbed into the Greco-Roman mythology as well. So then my favorite discovery was Freyr and Freya of the Norse mythology. They're the children of Njord. They're also, Freyr is the god of fertility, and Freya kind of ruled over the heavenly field, was also a goddess of fertility as well. They were only subordinate to Thor and Odin. And I just want to talk about this picture. If you're not on our YouTube, just go Google Freyr and Freya and look at the images, because Freyr rides a boar, which is like, okay, cool, God, Norse, whatever. And Freya has a chariot of cats. I'm a cat lady, and I want this as a painting in my room, but with me, so she be black, because I am so in love with the chariot being driven by cats. And then lastly, we have Artemis and Apollo. I feel like I don't even really need to say anything about them. Y'all know who they are, but I'm going to say something anyway. Because they're the Greek, part of Greek mythology, son and daughter of Zeus and Leto. Artemis is goddess of the hunt and patron and protector of young girls. Diana is also the Roman version of her. Diana also being Wonder Woman, so that kind of ties into that, why Diana is considered so strong. And Apollo was the sun god, also the god of music, and I can't read my own handwriting, something else, and he could bring the death and the plague. So it was nice to see that twin gods are throughout history and throughout a lot of different cultures. A lot of them represent one part being good and one part being evil.
Right, the balance.
It'd be kind of cool to see that Darth Elliot's God is maybe the evil and maybe his sister is actually the light. Because they even kind of do that where when you're looking at the shadow puppets, where one is the light and one is the dark. So that was kind of playing with that yin-yang of the two characters, which I thought was cool.
Possibly.
Yeah, so that's it for God of the Week. Feel free to look those gods up. They're really kind of cool to just kind of explore them. And then, also with Isis and Osiris, there were other gods that took parts of Osiris when he was broken apart. So that's kind of another play on that as well. It was Nethias and Anubis were also a part of that kind of people that came together to protect him after he'd been murdered by his brother. Okay, let's go ahead and move into predictions.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
You want to go first?
Sure. I don't really have any big predictions as much as I'm just curious to see these plot lines kind of like tie up and come together. We've kind of seen them move in that direction already so far. I'm excited to find out more about Everett. Like, it seems like he's much more of a big bad than we've kind of been able to be led on to be. So I'm curious to hear more about like his plan and that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. I also think it's interesting too, again, that they talked about like when they made the god for them to test on, which ended up being the sacrifice, that they made her with the intention of her being unable to be killed. So, and then obviously we have Julia, who now is indestructible and unable to be killed, who gets kidnapped to be the body in the end. So I'm curious to see what that's going to mean, especially with the girl already that he had. Like, I don't know. I'm not sure what that's going to happen with. But
yeah, I will say, I know you said earlier that they tend to end on happy notes, or something like that. I was surprised you said that because I've never noticed that in the history of the Magicians. They tend to end seasons with like people being chopped up by the beast, and then that's the cliffhanger, or like Julia was raped, and then like on the penultimate episode of season 1, Alice dying, all that kind of stuff. So they tend to go way dark and then give you a recovery like top of the next season,
a little reprieve. So
I think it's all down here from downhill from here, folks. I don't think it's going to be anything fun or pleasant. I'm curious about really small stuff, like why Alice smiled at the end of the episode when she was talking with Q about his powers. I'm curious as to how Penny's gonna work with Hyman to get Julia back.
I still want to know who's... Oh, wait a minute. Is Hyman who Penny saw in the elevator?
I don't think so. Maybe.
Well, either way, we still don't know who that is.
We still don't know who that is. We still got a bunch of stuff we got to figure out. I'm curious as to if Christopher Plover is messing up and about to kill Kady, because he wants to go kill Alice, and he is pretty much indestructible because of the beast and the spell and all that stuff. So there's a lot of stuff. I don't know. And it's fun to be in a position where I don't know, and I'm not angry or irritated because I'm like, this is taking too long. So it'll be an exciting next 2 weeks. But I think that wraps up this episode of the Magicians Aftershow on AfterBuzz TV. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Nate, where can they find you?
Guys, you can find me everywhere at DogLikeNate.
All right, you can find me everywhere on Instagram and Twitter, but not everywhere, but just Instagram and Twitter, at Miss Adrian Snow. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Ty Matthews will be back next week. You will be back next week because he's much better at this than me. All right, guys, thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.
Our founder, Keven Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.